Alana, Jaylo.
Yes, Mr. Rick Hammond.
We've got our Diet Wild Cherry Pepsi, some black chewing gum. We're about to get into it.
I don't like Diet Pepsi at all. I'd much rather have a regular wild cherry Pepsi. Thank you very much.
I would agree with you.
I think diet drinks are so disgusting.
Soda in general is horrible for you.
It is.
Even though I used to drink it a lot.
Yeah.
Now it's like a once in a while treat.
I do, yeah. I can go for weeks without one.
I've went for years without them.
Wow.
Before we started dating,
yes,
I think I went something like 4.5 years without drinking a soda.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I split a Mexican Coke with my sister.
They are good.
In December of 2017, and we started dating in 2018.
Yes, they are really good. Mexican Cokes are very good. You just have to have a bottle opener for it.
I believe
and the last time I had a soda was actually a couple days ago, but...
No way, really?
Yes, I did.
What did you have?
I just had a regular Pepsi.
Okay, nice.
But like I said, I mean, I know that I drink it more often than you do, but it's not really that often.
That's right. You got takeout from KFC earlier this week, right?
No, it wasn't KFC. I bought chicken McNuggets.
From McDonald's.
Yes, and I don't have them very often either.
Granted, it's been several years since I've gone into one of their establishments.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I thought that they only served Coke products.
No. See, I got my Pepsi from the store. I actually ordered it from a store.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, I didn't... they do have Coke products. Yes, they do. And of course, I did not get a Coke, actually. I did not this time. But occasionally, I will drink a Coke, but I'm more of a Pepsi girl, if you ask me. Because that's the way I like it.
They're great.
They are. But yeah, sodas are a once-in-a-lifetime treat. In fact, I don't remember the last time I had... Well, not once in a lifetime, but once in a while. I don't remember the last time I had like a 7-Up or a Sprite, because I haven't had them in a long time, and I haven't had... there's a soda called Slice.
I haven't had Slice since probably the 90s.
Yeah, but you seem to be... It's possible that you may be allergic to orange soda, right?
It's something weird like that, because it's the only type of pop that I drink and I get canker sores with.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
They may have changed the formula in the last decade, though.
But I so infrequently drink any type of soda that it's not really a big deal to me.
Okay.
And I can have regular oranges, so it's probably just some sort of chemical that they put in it.
Right, it might be just a chemical and it's nothing more. But I haven't bought a bag of oranges in a while. I like the small little oranges because I could just have like 2 at a time.
They're good.
Oh, they're so good. They are just so good. I like the cutie oranges, and I also like the Tangelos, and those are so good.
Very nice stuff, babes.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, sodas and oranges. And chips and chocolate.
Yes.
Specifically Doritos, nacho cheese Doritos, and...
Kit Kats.
Kit Kats, which...
Little ones.
I like getting the little ones.
They're good.
They are.
Yes.
Yes. But anyway, we digress.
Yes.
There's other interesting things to talk about on this podcast besides snacks.
You're wearing a sweater.
Yes. 2 sweaters.
Yes. But one in particular that you wore on the day when I decided to ask you out.
Actually, it wasn't the day that you decided. It was the day you were thinking about it.
No, but I decided that day that I was going to.
Yes. Both.
I didn't do it that day. But...
No. This was... shall we tell the story?
Go ahead.
Okay, so... there's a place in Portland that people can go to that have... in the disability community... where they offer classes and sometimes they have recreational activities.
Don't name the place, though.
I won't. I wasn't going to.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, my goodness. So, and we both went to the Chinese gardens. It was actually when I came back from a trip I took, and I had no idea that Rick was going to be there, honestly. I did not.
We had met once before, about a month earlier, at an open mic.
Yeah. And... it was, I was really excited to go to the Chinese gardens because I like walking in gardens. A friend of ours called me up and alerted me to that, and I got there early, and there was a guy who will not be nameless that happened to be there, and I just asked him.
He will be nameless.
He will be nameless, but I asked him since he was there if he could guide me for the rest of the day, and lo and behold, look who shows up.
I'm thinking that you and this guy are probably, doing some stuff behind the scenes.
No,
So-
I just met him. I just met this guy literally that day. Nice guy. Very nice.
I was hesitant to say anything that day, but you were wearing this sweater. You had your hair down and was kind of covering your ears, but not completely. Mm-hmm. So that turned me on a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. May have had some thoughts later on that night as I was, spending some time with the hand.
Okay, that's enough. We don't need to hear that.
And that's when this
We
whole
already know.
form of debauchery started, Jaylo.
Form of debauchery?
Yes.
Are you saying our personal life is debauchery?
No.
What is okay? We already know what debauchery is.
But it's a fun time. Can I tell us another story about the Chinese gardens that does not involve you?
What is it?
In 2013, my mom comes to visit me. Portland.
Oh, I think I remember the story. Go on.
You probably do.
Yes.
We go to the Chinese gardens. It's me, one of my mom's friends, and her. Mm-hmm. They both are big smokers. I think it was my mom threw a cigarette into one of the trash cans there. We walk inside to get something. Mm-hmm. And as we're leaving, we hear a lady come in saying, "There's a fire on one of the trash cans." And my immediate thought is, oh my God, just got to say something.
We got to get it, yeah.
And my mom and her friends just start laughing and walk away.
That's not good.
He's dead now, so he can't be prosecuted. But
that's not good. No, you should not do that. It's so bad to throw a lit cigarette in a garbage can. That is just not responsible. That's my opinion.
I agree.
And I also think that smoking is a disgusting habit.
No arguments about that for me, babe. I don't smoke.
Ugh, I'm so glad. Because if you did, that would be a big, big, big no-no for me.
Oh, no. I'm like the only one in my family who has never smoked. The only time I've touched cigarettes, I was in a play where I played this groper. And
oh, yeah. Okay.
This is in Boulder. And at one point, I take out a cigarette and I pretend to light it.
But it wasn't actually lit. It just looked like...
It was like a real cigarette and a lighter that had no fluid in it.
Oh, good. But were you like, ew, I have to touch that?
No, I thought it was gross just touching it and holding it close to my lips.
Wait a minute. Didn't you have a part in writing this sketch?
A very small part. I was there, but somebody else actually came up with this idea. This was a lady who was involved with the play, and she said, well, what if we did a thing where this blind guy is a groper and he stops the elevator because there's this hot lady on and he tries to get a little bit too close to her and he gets overly confident.
And then he just happens to have a cigarette in his satchel or whatever it is.
And I take out the cigarette, the lady's freaking out, I hold it to my lips, pretend to light it and say, relax, babe. They won't be here for another couple minutes.
Now, I will say this. You don't seem like the kind of creepy person that was portrayed in that sketch. And I didn't see the sketch, but I'm sure it was hilarious.
It would have been more accurate if I did it when I was a teenager, because I was much more of a perv back then.
Ooh. Well, I'm glad you kind of grew out of that.
Yes, kind of.
Well, okay. You did grow out of it, I would imagine. But you were so girl crazy as a teenager, you didn't care.
That's true, babes.
Which brings me to the point that I probably wouldn't have gotten along with you in my teens. I probably would have steered clear of you.
You were very goody-goody.
I'd say that. I mean, I did have personality. I just wasn't getting into the stuff that you probably were into.
Oh.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hung out with the likes of you.
I would have thought you were a little bit too special.
Special. No, there's other people that are a lot more special than you would think that I would.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of sheltered folks.
I was with an ex-girlfriend. We were talking, and there was this Christian lady in the room. I was about 16 at the time.
Oh, yeah, you made fun of her, didn't you?
I made fun of the Christian girl. I don't remember what the comment was. But I just remember her saying, "Did you just say that because I'm a Christian?" And I just said, "No," and looked back to my girlfriend and started talking to her.
Oh, you are just cold, Bob.
I think I need a kiss for that. Jaylo, don't make farting sounds. I'm not trying to kiss you.
Okay. I was just kidding. That was just a joke.
All right, real kiss.
Oh no, I just think you were just this holy terror.
No, I wasn't.
Apathetic. Maybe not apathetic. I guess I should rephrase that. You weren't as nice as you are now.
No, most of my rage was directed inward. I definitely still have this thing to where I'll sometimes say what's on my mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll make things up to get a rise out of people, which doesn't always go over well.
Yeah.
But I'm more contained with that now than I used to be.
I honestly think that there are a lot more people that I know and that you know that are a lot more blunt than you, and so I'm very surprised that even you would think that you are blunt, because I know what kind of people blunt people are, and you seem to have it a lot more contained than you would have if I met you like 20 years ago.
I like people who are straightforward, but I also like people who just say crazy shit just to see if they can get away with it. I'm more one of those types.
I think that unfilteredness, though, I understand it to an extent, because there are some people that are unfiltered and they actually make points, but there are people that are unfiltered that just want to hear themselves talk.
That's what I don't like, is somebody who will just ramble on for hours and hours.
That's what I mean. I think unfilteredness has been so glorified that it's thought of as like freedom of expression, but it is to a point. I think that there are people that really need to shut up.
Here's what I would say. It's freedom of expression, but just because you have the right to express yourself doesn't mean I'm obligated to listen.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean.
It's this weird mix because we have that at the same time that cancel culture is going on.
And I hate cancel culture. I think it should die. But and I think that political correctness has completely taken over that as well. And I don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
We will a little bit later on, though, when we discuss films.
Yes, but I feel that there is a point to unfilteredness. I don't need to listen to everything, but I also feel that people shouldn't be censored either.
Good.
But there are people that need to shut up. Some of them.
Yes.
And we know we don't have to go there.
No,
but
we don't.
You know what I mean. People need to shut up for a little bit. Some people.
Shut up, okay.
Shut up, okay.
Stop riding my ass.
What?
Stop riding my ass.
Oh, really? I didn't know you had one.
Oh, Jaylo.
And I'm not talking about your buttocks.
Oh, Jaylo.
I'm talking about an animal.
You don't like to swear.
Bubs, come on.
I'm not allowed to go there. I was just going to say, but you will say ass on occasion. If
Well, in a context, when I'm talking, let me give you an example. When I'm talking about an ass, I'm not talking about your butt. I'm talking about an animal that is actually an ass, which is not a donkey. For those of you who have grown up thinking that asses are donkeys, or not, and we don't have to go into that, but it is an animal. There is significance to it, and every time I would refer to asses, I'm talking about an animal and not people, and not the bottom that you sit on.
I'm going to have to take you around some nice-looking animals so I can hear you say, "Oh, that's a great ass." Stop.
You deserve that one.
No, I don't. Jaylo.
Yes.
Yesterday afternoon, we watched some DS9.
Oh, it was so good. Oh, it was so good. I have to talk about this.
Tell me about Major Kira Nerys and her episode. Well, the first one that she's involved in with the cause.
So it starts with, and let's see, there's some things that happen in the beginning which are not as important as what happens.
Do you want me to give an overview, or do you want to take it?
Why don't you start from the beginning?
Okay.
And I'll continue on.
Kira Nerys is going to celebrate the life of her mother, Maru. And I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this just so we can,
Okay.
have a discussion about it. She gets these specific types of flowers I'm horrible with names. Jaylo, they were
They
called.
are Bajoran lilacs.
Exactly.
And lilacs are beautiful flowers. Mm-hmm. I don't know how Bajoran lilacs look like, but the lilacs here are very nice.
They have a little Bajorn symbol on them.
And they smell. They may smell
like the prophets.
Yeah, they may smell like lilacs, but I don't know.
Yes. Kira's collect all the stuff, including the flowers. Then she's hanging out in her quarters, sleeping. She gets a transmission from Galdecott.
Of all people.
Yes. He tells her a few things about her mother. That she didn't really die in this prisoner camp like Kira suspected. And that the two of them, Galdecott and Maru, were lovers.
And I cringed at that, imagining that.
There's a little bit of a backstory that
backstory
we're going to give into after I actually give you the description about how this episode was put together. But we'll get there when we get there. Goes to commercial. We hear some music. Come back. She's talking to Cisco, saying that she can't believe Galdecott. But she's having trouble at work. Mm-hmm. She's yelling at Bashir, O'Brien.
She's really snappy.
Yep.
Very snappy. She doesn't know, and she doesn't even know why.
I should back up.
Yes.
Before she goes to Cisco, and after she's snappy, she goes to Odo, who says, you should do something about this. Mm-hmm. So then she goes to the emissary.
Yes.
She says, I want to go and see, I believe it's called the Orb of Time, and only the emissary can get me in there.
Right. You can pull some strings.
Nothing's going to change unless the prophets say it's okay. So you as the emissary don't have to worry about this having a huge impact on the past. Cisco, begrudgingly, I think, agrees. She goes to look at the Orb of Time. The prophets transport her back to the prisoner camp where Maru, her 3 kids, and husband were at.
And she sees herself as
a 3-year-old.
She sees herself as little Nerys.
Yep.
Which I thought was kind of interesting.
Another Bajoran tries taking food from the children. Mm-hmm. Kira steps in, helps out. They introduce each other. She gives a fake name, all that stuff.
Yep.
A Bajoran guard, along with some Cardassians, come in and take women away.
And this Bajorian guard happens to be a collaborator, correct?
Yes, that's how he
Yes.
gets to be a guard.
Yep.
I should say he's a collaborator because he's not really a guard. Anyways,
Yes.
2 of the women he takes are Maru and Nerys.
And she actually goes by the name Luma.
We're going to call her Kira just to keep this simple.
Okay, Kira. We'll call her Kira, even though she didn't use that name, but okay.
Because if we call her by the name in this episode, I'm just going to keep forgetting it, and then it's...
Well, I'm not going to forget it.
Well, yes, but I'm the one giving it the description.
That's why you have me here for.
Okay.
So I'll remember the stuff that you forget.
We want to keep it a little bit simple, though.
But anyway, we'll call her Kira for the sake of this explanation.
Correct. They go to Terok Nor, which years later becomes DS9.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it looks different.
Not really.
Not really?
The inside's a little bit, but we don't have to get into the aesthetics right now.
They have some weird names for places. Yes. Terok Nor.
Anyways, all these ladies are waiting. The Bajoran collaborator comes in and says, you have been selected by the Cardassian government basically to be concubines. We're going to have a huge celebration tonight. Until then, y'all get some quarters.
And a lot of food.
And a lot of food. You get to share quarters with one of the other concubines. And we're going to have a party tonight. Be cool, or else your family's going to have some issues.
Yeah.
But if you are cool, we're going to give them food and Band-Aids and all that cool shit. So, Kira and Maru, otherwise known as Major's mama.
Major's mama. She figured it out, but Maru did not.
Of course she figured it out, babe.
Yes. Oh.
They go to their quarters. There's tons of food. Mm-hmm. They eat. Well, Maru just stuffs her face.
She's like, oh, there's fresh mova, whatever that is.
Great stuff.
Whatever it is. It sounds like she's just enjoying it, and she's like, oh, you know how long it's been since I've had this? And then she thinks about her family that doesn't have any food.
And keeps eating.
Does she keep eating?
Yes.
Okay. She keeps eating.
She's a very selfish woman. Anyways,
Does she really?
Yes.
Okay.
Later that night, it's the party with the Bajoran concubines and the Cardassians.
Yep.
Everybody's kind of talking. Maru is taken to this one corner by a Cardassian. Major Kira is approached by another one. She sits by somebody. Gul Dukat walks in. He goes over to the person who's cornering Maru. The Cardassian who is with Kira says, word by word, what Gul Dukat is going to repeat.
Uh-huh. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Dukat walks off with Maru.
Yep.
And they had already established a relationship because when they first came on the station, he fixed a scar that was on her face.
Yes, with that generator.
Yeah, so they have a little bit of a connection.
Yes.
Kira asks her man, well, how did you know that Dukat was going to say this? He explains that this is Dukat's MO. He always does this with somebody he likes.
Well, that wasn't her guy, though. He was just the guy that...
I know, babe. I'm telling a story, though.
My goodness.
It was the guy she was with at the moment. They said he's no odo. Okay. Back to the story.
Okay.
She goes back to her quarters. We find out that Maru is no longer there because she's now hanging out with Dukat.
Yeah, which to Kira's chagrin, she doesn't like what's going on.
No, she ends up attacking the Bajoran collaborator and two Cardassians.
Yep.
She's sent down to the bottom of the station into the ore mines and forced to work.
Yes.
She comes back up to see Maru a few weeks later because Maru and Dukat were off having a grand old time while everybody was suffering.
Yep, on their vacation, wherever it is.
And Major's mama tries to explain that, he's not that bad of a guy. He told me that he made that whole thing up with the Cardassian at the party. You just don't know him how I am.
And it's pretty obvious that she's been completely brainwashed. At least it's implied that she was brainwashed.
Right. Kira does some stuff. She goes back to the mines. And she decides that she's going to kill her mom with a bomb.
And Dukat.
Yep. But also her mom.
Yes.
She finagles her way back to the quarters.
Yes.
Maru is accepting of her. Dukat gives Maru a chip to look at.
Yes.
Kira sets the bomb to explode. She sees her father on the screen. And he's explaining what's going on with him and the children, how they have more food and supplies.
Yep.
Maru starts crying.
And he tells Maru that no matter what happens, he still loves her.
Right.
Yep.
Kira gets Dukat and Maru, gets them out of the room right as it explodes. Her mom is injured, but she survives.
Yes.
Then Kira comes back to the time of DS9 and the emissary.
Yeah.
She returns to the station, tells Captain Sisko the story, and says that she looked deeper into the records, found out that her mom lived another 7 years and died in a Cardassian hospital, had 7 years of luxury while her children and people were in complete poverty.
Yep, she and the 7 years she was away from her family and remained with Dukat.
Sisko asks, "Do you regret saving your mother's life?" And Kira responds with, "Part of me really does regret it, but at the end of the day, she was my mom."
Yep.
What did you think of this episode? First, do you want a backstory about this before I tell you more of the episode?
A backstory? Okay.
About what came into the creation of this episode.
Yes. Oh, you heard an interview about it?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was talked about in What We Left Behind.
Was Dukat, the guy who played Dukat, was he interviewed for this?
Yes, he was, but I think it more focused on Nana Visitor telling the story of this episode.
Oh, really?
If I remember correctly, which I may not be. Okay. Nana goes to a lot of conventions. Mm-hmm. And at one of them, this lady approached her and says, "I think Major Kira is the best character on TV, and I really relate to her. This was a slightly older woman. And at first Nana was like, oh, thank you so much. You know, it's fun being on the show. I'm glad you like it and relate to the character. The lady says, let me show you something. And she shows her tattoos, numbers.
Really?
And explains that she was in Auschwitz.
Oh, wow. She was tattooed in Auschwitz.
Yes, this fan that Nana met at a convention.
Wow.
So Nana takes her character more seriously. Ira Stephen Bear, who was the producer of the show, calls her into his office and says, we're thinking of doing a story where Major Kira and Gul Dukat fall in love. She thinks of the woman that she met who was in Auschwitz and says, I can't do that because I now think of Kira in a way as representing Jewish people who were survivors. They get into a fight. Eventually he says, I was just testing you. We're going to have Gul Dukat fall in love with her mom. And that's kind of how this episode came about.
Really?
Yes.
So he was fighting with her, but in actuality, he was thinking about that same episode or that same thing.
But he wanted to get her response to it.
That is so interesting. Wow.
Tell me your thoughts on this episode.
Very creative. So I made a comment to you yesterday about the way that Gul Dukat took these women, right? These women who had families, maybe husbands, and they're living in luxury while everybody's in poverty that they knew in their past, right? And in some ways, it kind of reminds me of prostitution. If that makes any sense.
I could totally see that.
Dukat is the pimp, you know. They are his girls. And they're the one, you know, a lot of prostitutes make a lot of money and they seem to be living in luxury, but they're sacrificing their own selves to get that. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. But yeah, I liked how they put together this episode, as heavy as it was.
There is a Jewish holiday, and I might be getting the pronunciation wrong, but I believe it's Purim.
Purim?
Yes. And on this holiday, if you're a Jew and you're Orthodox, you are supposed to feast and eat a lot of food. I've heard stories that one of the few days... I'm sorry, I'm getting that wrong.
What?
It's not Purim. I'm thinking of Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
The day where Jews atone by not eating.
Yom Kippur, yeah.
Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
I've heard stories that on Yom Kippur was the only time in the concentration camps where there would be tons of food around.
And they weren't supposed to eat it?
Yes. Well, they were allowed to eat it, but for if you're following the tenets of Judaism, you're not supposed to eat it. Yeah. So it was a way to mess with the prisoner psychologically.
That's terrible.
Yes. I think a lot... You looked at it from prostitution.
I did.
I think of it as an occupying force.
Well, I look at it both ways, actually.
So what does this say about survivor's guilt, this episode? Because in a way... Maru is a survivor. Even though she's still part of the occupation, she's one of the quote-unquote lucky ones who gets to eat.
Yes. Right. I don't know anyone who has survived the Holocaust. I've only been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. and heard things on the speakers of Holocaust survivors explaining how they survived not being gassed, right? And what they had to do to survive. And I think that you know how people talk about being in survival mode?
Yes.
Like they had to do pretty much anything it took to survive it and then worry about the consequences later. And I think that's what she was doing, even though I thought, well, how could you be relishing in the things that Dukat is lavishing you with when your family is who knows what's going on with them? They're probably much more worse off than you are, and I think I kind of understand why they would feel survivor's guilt.
After Major Kira saves Ducat and her mom. Maru lives another 7 years.
Yep.
How often do you think she thinks about her children?
She probably thinks of them often. I don't know why she wouldn't think of them at all. She probably thinks about them like, oh, why did I do this? Why am I here? I'm sure she questions herself so many times. And she's thinking, why am I with this man that is willing to give me pretty much anything I want? Why couldn't I be with my husband that I actually love? And she's probably torn. Very torn. I would imagine. I don't think she's a bad person. I just think she had to do what she had to do.
What do you think this episode says about how Ducat feels about Major Kira?
I think it's kind of creepy. Is that fair to say?
It's your opinion.
I think it's creepy. I really do. Because, it's not enough that he was with her mother. Hasn't he had enough? And now Major Kira is a grown woman, and now he's obsessed with her. And I think it's a little bit creepy to me, honestly.
Does it tell you something about the occupier's mentality? He kind of feels this right to have whatever he wants in a way.
It says a lot about his mentality, yes. It seemed like he got everything he wanted, and he's still not being held accountable for it.
He's into his own entitlement.
He is into his own entitlement, and he has not been held to a higher standard at all.
Cardassian privilege.
Cardassian privilege. Check your Cardassian privilege. And I feel that the same people, and it doesn't matter who it is, the same people that yell privilege, right? Check your privilege. I'll just say, it doesn't matter who it is. They're the ones that are the most privileged, I think. That's how I see it. They're the ones that are the elite, so-called, and they feel like they have a sense of entitlement to lecture everybody else. And I feel that's what Ducat, that's why he feels like he has a lot of power.
It would have been interesting if Ducat, at some point during the show, would have said, check your privilege, Major. As a spoiler, I will tell you this, he never says that in the run of the series.
This is in the 90s.
Right.
This would not have happened in the 90s.
But that would have been awesome.
Check your status.
Yeah. I don't know if it's always the most privileged who say that, but oftentimes it is.
I think most of the time, if not all the time, it is.
Not all the time. Oftentimes, I would say.
Oftentimes. Actually, I do think it's pretty much all the time, but that's
your opinion.
My opinion.
Yes.
But I mean, Ducat, the man who played Ducat, is so good.
He's awesome.
Like I said, I love to hate this character, but I can't hate the man who plays him because I don't know him. He's just so good. If I ever talked to him, I would say, you do such a great job at Ducat that I don't like this character, but you're so good. You have done your job well.
Jaylo.
Yes.
We watched another episode dealing with Major Kira.
Another good one.
And you got to meet Vic Fontaine.
Yes, I did.
Do you want to give the description, or do you want me to?
Well, I do want to give some description. You kind of took over the last one.
Oh.
I don't know if you realize that, but I didn't really say a lot in the last description.
Oh, I thought you said too much. Okay.
No, you said a lot. But
all right.
So it starts in a holosuite. Worf and Dax are there. O'Brien is there. Bashir is there. And Kira and Odo are there. Vic Fontaine is a hologram who's giving a concert. And he kind of reminds me of like a Frank Sinatra-esque type of a personality.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, one of these types.
Yes. One of those types from like New York, I guess.
But who's playing Vegas?
Yes, who's playing Vegas. And he seems to know about people's personal lives. O'Brien missing his wife. He knows Bashir pretty well. Worf and Dax marrying each other, and then he looks at Kira and Odo and doesn't mention it. Anything. Because he's like, I don't want to, I don't want to bring it up. It's not the right time. And so all that happened, and was Odo talking to Cisco before he went back into the holosuite?
Do you want me to jump in a little bit?
Go ahead.
They leave.
Yeah.
Go out. Everybody's kind of going their separate ways. But before that happens, Kira tells Dax, I believe, that she's going down to Bajor for the next few days to hang out with her ex-boyfriend, Shakar.
Yes.
So Odo's kind of on red alert in his head, but he doesn't say anything.
And he's thinking that she's going to get back together with Shakar.
Right. The group breaks up. Julian starts talking to Miles about the program.
Yep.
Odo, the investigator that he is listening in, while Julian explains that Vic Fontaine has given him great advice on women.
Yep.
Well, we already know he has a thing for Major Kira. It goes to the break.
Yep.
It comes back. Do you want to pick it up, Jaylo?
And Odo, I may be skipping ahead here, but I do want to get to the good stuff. But Odo decides, I'm going to take a visit to Vic Fontaine, because I want to know what he was thinking when he saw the two of us. So he goes into the holosuite, and there's Vic Fontaine, and he's talking to Odo, and he says, well, it's pretty obvious you got a thing for Major Kira. And it's like, well, really? And he's like, yeah, but I want to teach you how to have some fun, because he notices that Odo's really tense. He's always been intense. And he's also tense. He needs to lighten up a little bit. And what does he do? He brings a crowd. There's a piano. Odo sits in front of it, and the piano plays by itself, but it looks like he's playing, and he starts to slowly relax, and then he starts to bob his head and starts dancing. And, two girls were noticing that. Go on, Mr. Hammond.
After the show, please don't tickle me.
Okay.
Vic and Odo are hanging out at Vic's suite. The two girls come by. There's a little bit of chit-chat. They want to go out to see a show. Odo is a little bit reluctant, but Vic explains to him, you need a little bit of practice before you can go after somebody like the Major and be successful.
But there's a little bit of a twist, you see.
Tell me.
They go to the show, and he introduces a woman. He says, she's hotter than whatever.
No, you're on.
What? Wait, which one was it?
That's later in the episode, babes.
Okay, all right.
So,
Continue.
You don't see what happens
when
the four of them go out on the double dates.
No, that is true. You don't.
I believe it's right after this. It's like the next day. Odo goes to see the emissary.
That's right.
And hand him a security report.
Yes.
While he's waiting for Cisco to respond to what he's reading, he starts humming a certain song. And Cisco hears this and starts snapping his fingers. Odo realizes what he's doing and he stops.
Yes.
Cisco tells him, hey, bro, don't stop on my accounts.
Yeah, because and the song is You Can't Take That Away From Me, which is a great song.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, he goes back into the holosuites.
Yes.
Performing with Vic, we gather rather from what Odo is saying that this is a week of this going on, where he's come to the holosuite every single night. Vic says, just enjoy the show, Pally.
Yeah, exactly.
A singer comes out who looks just like Major Kira.
Except she goes by Lola.
Right. After the show, Vic is giving a toast at his place to whatever makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
He leaves the room. Odo and hologram Kira are talking. The constable realizes that he can't do this. He calls Mr. Fontaine back into the room.
Yep.
Vic says, this program is designed for you. It took me an hour to take out the Russian accents that Julian had in one of his spy programs.
We did see that one. We did see that one. Yes.
I love that.
That was a great episode.
But he says, it ain't nothing like the real thing, baby.
Oh, my goodness.
And he leaves.
Yeah.
Kira comes back from Bajor. Do you want to pick up?
Yep. Kira comes back from Bajor. And she was explaining that, there was only... She was telling, people that, what Shakar wanted was strictly business and nothing happened.
Not exactly. She's leaving it a little bit vague, but keep going.
Well, you know what I mean.
Go ahead.
It doesn't have to be perfect. I think you should go.
Okay. She goes to a holosuite to do some meditation.
Yep.
While she's in there, Vic Fontaine decides to join her. Because he's cool like that.
Mm-hmm.
He explains that Odo is really digging her.
Mm-hmm.
And he invites Kira to a show that night.
Yep.
After she accepts, Vic gets into the communication system, reaches out to the constable, tells him that he's perfected the Major Kira hologram, and would like him to come to the club at 9 o'clock that night. Jaylo, do you want to pick it up, or do you want me to continue?
Oh, yes, I'll pick it up. So, they go to the holosuite. Dinner is on. Vic Fontaine. He's the one that's in charge of the food. And so they are talking, and, she sounds like Kira. She looks like Kira.
Because she is Kira.
Because she is Kira. Well, Odo thinks that she's a hologram and gets really upset with Vic.
Once he finds out the truth.
When she finds out the truth. And he kind of leaves her there, right?
Odo just walks out.
He walks out and he confronts Vic, and she's like, I am very upset with you. And he's like, well, she isn't a hologram. And he's like, what? She's not a hologram? Like, no.
He gets upset with Vic after he finds out that she's not a hologram. And he storms out.
Yes.
And Vic eventually turns off his own program.
Yep, he does.
Depriving the Major of the joy of doing that.
Yep.
Continue, Jaylo.
Well, let's see.
Or do you want me to go on?
Go ahead.
Okay. Like a couple of days later or so, Odo's still really embarrassed. Vic reaches out and is like, hey, I'm sorry, Pally, I blew this thing. And Odo just cuts off communication. He doesn't want to hear it.
Nope.
Dax is walking around the station with Nerys. Nerys says, have you ever had a moment of clarity?
Yep.
Dax says, oh, once or twice in 7 lifetimes. Kira explains, I had one last night. Odo walks out of his office. Mm-hmm. She says, I'm having another one right now. Mm-hmm. Runs over. Tells Odo, we need to talk about what happened in the holosuite, bro.
Yes.
He's like, I don't think this is the time. They get into a little bit of an exchange.
And he's thinking that she went back to Shakar.
She explains that that's not the case.
That's not happened, yeah.
And they ended up making out on the promenade in front of everybody.
Yes, they did.
Vic Fontaine
is
blasts
singing
music into the speaker system.
I thought that was a very, very cool scene. And I remember that one part where he's like, well, I suppose that you probably want me to kiss you. Well, then do it then. And then he does.
I will tell you this. That part of the episode was too 90s sitcom-y for me.
Oh, really?
Because if you think about 90s sitcoms, oftentimes they would have two characters get really, really angry at each other.
Yes, they do.
Right before they kissed.
You are right.
So it felt a little bit too hacky for me, that part of the episode.
Yes.
I like this episode, though. I'm not a huge fan of when they do comedy.
When they do comedy?
In DS9, when it's the main plot points.
Okay.
I like it when they're more dramatic and the comedy's just sort of in the backgrounds. This episode is pretty good. Plus, it kind of sets up things for later with Odo and Major Kira, and now you're introduced to Vic Fontaine, and you get a sense of who he is. I think it's a really good episode.
But what about the comedy in Who Mourns for Morn?
I like it, but if you remember yesterday, I would have, if it was me making that episode, I would have had a completely different take and just had people give eulogies about Morn through the whole episode.
I I would disagree with that. I think it was interesting how it came out to be, but that's my opinion.
What's your thoughts on this episode? Now that you know my thoughts, that it's good and it sets up things for the series.
Maybe it would have done done without the getting angry before the kissing stuff. It could have been a little bit more creative, but I do like that they end up kissing it in the middle of the promenade in front of everybody.
Despite what I said about not always liking the humor in DS9, Vic is great. He's such a cool character. Yeah, he's a cool character, and even though Julian Bashir was right, he is not like any other hologram because he's able to get the communication system. He's able to go from holosuite to holosuite. He knows that he's fake.
He knows that he's fake, which is kind of interesting because a hologram usually doesn't know that they're fake. I like that. He's just a cool guy. Slick Vic.
Slick Vic.
I call him Slick Vic.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Slick Vic Fontaine.
You will see more of him in the future.
Yeah, Slick Vic Fontaine. And the guy who plays him is good.
James Darren.
James Darren, which we kind of found out about last night.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
So that's basically our take on the episode His Way.
Yes. Is that what it's called, His Way?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yes. Jaylo.
Yes.
I showed you 2 films last night.
Yes, you did.
Pump Up the Volume.
We're getting into the good stuff.
And Me and Earl and the Dying Girl.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pump Up the Volume is an underrated classic.
Mm.
Let me give you some background about my experience with the film.
Okay.
I had never heard of it. 2007, I'm talking to a friend of mine. Believe we're on the bus in Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we got on the subject of Christian Slater.
Yeah.
He tells me Slater made this film in the early 90s called Pump Up the Volume. And my friend says it's one of the best films of the last 60 years. It's up there with Gone with the Wind.
Really?
Which is high praise. I don't know.
That's really high.
I might not go that far, but it's very good.
I wouldn't go that far.
So in 2008, I found a copy of the film. Maybe thanks to the good people at Damanoid. Watched it a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted an excuse to watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
We started dating, doing movie nights.
Yeah.
And so, last night, I was able to see it again with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to give an overview of the film, or do you want me to?
I will give you as much of an overview as possible. Okay. Basically, the basic premise is about this kid that is in Arizona. It's implied that he just moved to the neighborhood. And he has this underground radio station that all the kids are listening to. And his DJ name is Happy Harry Hard On, and you can kind of figure out what that would possibly mean. And he's the kind of kid that will say what's on his mind on the radio station, play some really good music, because the music in the movie was pretty good. But in real life, his name is Mark, and he's like completely shy, especially around pretty girls. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He eats his lunch by himself. He doesn't know, he feels like an outcast. But on the radio station, he's the most confident guy ever. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Go on, Mr. Hammond.
The show is very popular at the school. Pirate radio station, the signal isn't great. One of the reasons it's popular, besides for the fact that there's all the sexual talk, is because Mark talks a lot about the school and the administration.
It's great.
His dad does some sort of work with the school. So he... What are you doing, babes?
Oh, I'm looking for the teacher. Oh, here it is. Go on.
Okay. So what was distracting that you?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So he steals a lot of his dad's papers, finds out about the people working at the school. One night he calls up a guidance counselor and just like rips into him for having this girl kicked out because she was pregnant. Talks about the teachers, and He also gets mail from the students delivered to this post office box. He reads this poetry from this one girl, who we find out later is named Nora, but I think he calls her Poetry Girl at first. And he reads letters from the students. Sometimes he'll call them, sometimes he won't. He decides to contact this kid who says that he's thinking about committing suicide.
Malcolm Kaiser.
Calls him. Doesn't tell him not to do it, but is asking him questions about his life. Malcolm hangs up in the middle of the phone call. And the next day, we find out that Mr. Kaiser killed himself.
Right.
Now people are starting to take more notice of this radio show.
Including the media.
Right, exactly. And there's some speculation that he might not broadcast ever again. He's thinking about that. Around this time, Nora figures out who he is.
Right.
Because she's been listening intently and listening to these little clues. Like he'll say that, I eat lunch alone at the stairwell. I chew this particular type of gum.
Yep.
Things of that nature.
Yep.
I just moved here.
Uh-huh.
She confronts him. She tells him, you don't have anything to worry about. You weren't the bad guy in this.
Right.
All that type of stuff.
And basically, because, I know who you are and your message is coming out.
Right.
Your message, everybody's listening to your message.
They call a big PTA meeting.
Yeah, this is an interesting scene.
Mark goes there. There's a huge ruckus. He tells his mom that he wants to rush home. So he says, oh, you want to listen to that Happy Harry Hard-On character? And he says, I guess so, Ma.
I guess so. And meanwhile, his parents are so clueless.
They're old hippies, and we're going to get to that in a little while. Because I have some thoughts.
I do too.
Okay.
But
he goes home. Isn't really going to broadcast. He's kind of up in the air about it. Nora shows up.
Yep.
He says, why don't you at least tell me to fuck off or get out of here? You're not even saying anything to me.
Yep.
He sits down, turns away from her, opens up the microphone, starts telling this story about this guy who can't communicate unless he's on the air.
Yeah, it's like, I can't talk. Yeah.
His parents come into the house late.
This is a great scene.
They decide to turn it on to listen to the radio show. And they hear Mark's voice.
And they're like, Mark, open the door.
They go down to the basement. He hides his equipment, opens the door. Kind of think that he's Happy Harry, but they can't prove it.
Yeah.
Then they see Nora, who gives them plausible deniability. They're happy for a son.
And after you explain this, can you explain again what plausible deniability is? Because I've heard about that term, but I'm not sure what that is.
You don't know what plausible deniability is. It's basically, if I don't want you to believe something, and you give me excuse not to believe it, I won't believe it.
Okay,
It's more complicated than that, but I don't want to get into a whole legal thing right now.
Well, no, I've heard of it. I just didn't quite understand.
Yeah, I don't want to sidetrack too much, though.
Okay.
We should also say, after the parents leave, I believe, I might be getting this a little bit wrong because of the tea tree oil distraction, but
come on, really?
He called up the guidance counselor again. Guidance counselor has the number traced. What he doesn't know is Mark somehow rigged this transmitter so that it'll send the foam signal someplace else in his neighborhood. So the police break into one of his neighbors' houses and find this weird transmitter.
Right.
Mark puts on a song, goes out, sees Nora in the backyard. They kind of get naked and are circling around each other and are laying on the ground. He had made references to wearing a cock ring before. So he says, is that really true? And he says, no, that's just something I read in a magazine. They hear the police. They look over and they see the police bringing this old couple back to their house where they thought
it's like, oh no, they're just dropping off my number. They're just dropping off my neighbor.
Right. Okay. So fast forward, and now the national media has taken interest in this. It's like a couple of days later. By this point, Nora and some other students have been called into the principal's office. One of the kids for selling tapes of the show.
Yep.
Nora because she's bad at math.
Yeah.
She tells the principal to fuck herself and is kicked out.
We didn't see the scene.
We saw them being called in, but we didn't see Nora.
We didn't see Nora pushing back against the principal.
This is what she tells to Mark.
Yeah.
One of Mark's favorite teacher who educates him on the subject of English is
English
fired.
teacher, yes, is fired, yeah.
Yes.
Because she was the one who was asking questions to the principal, like, why did you do this?
Correct. Okay.
She was a whistleblower.
So we find out that NBC plans to broadcast the Happy Harry Hard-On show. They're going to take the feed and air it, right? Mm-hmm. So now we got the national media. There's this one spot in the neighborhood where you can really hear Mark's show well.
Uh-huh.
So a bunch of kids go to that place. There's this huge party going on.
Yep.
They're not sure if he's going to go on the air. He shows Nora his mom's old Jeep.
Yep.
That has all this equipment.
All his equipment, and she's sitting in the passenger seat. Or the driver's seat.
Because by now the chairman of the FCC is out, and he says, we're going to track down him if he tries to broadcast tonight, and we're going to take this kid down. Mm-hmm. He thinks, well, if I could drive around, it's going to be harder for them to pick up the signal.
Right.
Comes on the air that night. Kids are happy. He's broadcasting. Nora's driving around the neighborhood. She drives off of the road and hits a few bumps.
Yep. And they lose transmission.
No. She disconnects his harmonizer.
That's right, the harmonizer.
So now he has to speak in his real voice.
Yep.
And at first, he's thinking, I can't do this. Then he decides to do it. Mm-hmm. He talks about how being a teenager is hard, but you got to do it so you can get through the rest of your life.
Right.
Starts talking how things can be better, but we all got to stand up, do our part, and be who you are.
Right.
That means saying fuck or sit 1,000 times, and that's what you got to do. But be you. And then the Jeep stops. Cops come over, take the two of them away. People are applauding.
I thought it was just him.
No, they take both of them away. He's an accomplice.
Oh, and he also mentioned that he's starting to come to a place of healing.
Right.
When he says that, he looks at Nora.
Exactly.
Right.
And the cops are about to put him in the police car. He looks at the crowd, and he says, talk hard.
Yep.
It's taken away. Screen fades to black, and you hear all these amateur radio stations starting up across the country by young people who are speaking their truth. Mm-hmm. That's how the film ends.
That was a great way how it ended.
I think this is a classic film that not enough people remember today. Mm. And the message is, be who you are, speak your truth. Speak truth to power.
And don't let anybody censor you no matter what the cost is.
Don't take any shit from anybody, Jaylo.
You said it, not me.
Right. What do you think about this film and what it says?
I honestly think that teens and adults should watch this because this is going on right now in our own country where people are canceling other people because they disagree with what they say, and I honestly think that we could learn a lot from Mark, aka Happy Harry.
It's happening on both sides too. Conservatives and liberals are busy canceling each other every single day.
It should be stopped. It really should be. I honestly think that there are some mainly liberal people that are speaking out and saying this isn't good. This isn't good for anybody. This isn't good for anybody, and we have to stop it before it completely. Well, it's already out of hand, but it may get worse if we don't stop it. And
there are some conservatives coming out against censorship too.
Oh, there's a lot of them coming out against censorship, and my question is, and I would, I don't know, like thinking about that movie that we just saw, Pump Up the Volume. My question is, well, if you don't like it so much, what's wrong with changing the channel or looking the other way?
Going to another podcast.
Looking the other way. If you don't agree with them, that's fine, but there are like a million things to listen to, a million things to watch, and it doesn't have to be that everybody has to follow your protocol.
The idea of groupthink.
I can't stand groupthink.
Mark pushes back against that.
Right.
And he gives us the excuse as the audience to push back against that. Because there's like the audience, us watching the movie, but then there's the audience in the movie who are characters in it, who learn how to push back. There's a girl in the movie who kind of sets her house on fire by putting metal into her microwave.
Yeah, that was I believe that was the popular girl, one of the popular girls.
There's this overweight kid who kind of gets accepted because he starts selling tapes of the show, which is this program that the administration doesn't want them to listen to.
Right.
You know, there's Mark's teacher. Yeah, he's not Happy Harry to her, but she kind of learns to push back because of the students, I think.
Yep.
And steals files, gives them to Mark's father that shows that the principal is having students kicked out of the school.
I have to mention something that we forgot to mention.
Go ahead.
That while she was fired, this English teacher was fired, she was in the office with the principal and Mark's dad and the administration. And she was questioning the principal and saying, what about all these files where all these people were suspended for doing pretty much nothing to be suspended? Like Cheryl and, you know, and she mentioned these people, and her only excuse is, well, they were troublemakers. And her father hears this, and he's already read, he had all the files, and he then suspends her, and she's like, you can't suspend me. And he says, I think I just did.
Okay.
So, I mean, we forgot to mention that, but
I think I just did. But
I think I just did.
No, I mean, I think I just did mention it. I just did it in a much more succinct way. But the point is, Mark teaches the people in the movie to fight back against the system. And he tells us, the real audience, that we need to fight it as well, in our own way.
Yeah.
Which I think good art questions the system that it's made in. Whether it's Pump Up the Volume, NWA, Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, good artists push back against the system.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think it's true. We were seeing it in the 90s too with, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s with a rap group called 2 Live Crew. And I've heard a little bit of their stuff. I don't particularly like the group, but they were being censored.
Also with Charlton Heston and George H.W. Bush coming out against Ice-T and Body Count in the early 90s.
Yeah, and I don't agree with anyone, you know, I don't agree with, I may not like that material. I don't listen to Ice-T much at all. I don't like that material, but that doesn't mean that I should make anybody else not like the material either. They have their own opinion about the material, and if they want to listen to it, I don't have to say that. I don't have to tell them, no, you can't listen to it. But what about, why don't we talk about like the Family Research Council? Remember the ones that put stickers on albums, which I don't understand.
Led by Tipper Gore.
Yeah, I did not agree with that.
No,
I think it's a waste of time.
I agree with you, babe. But that fight has already been lost. I want to talk a little bit, though, about... We know what Mark says about speaking your truth.
Mm-hmm.
What does Mark say about the artist's life? Because he takes on this persona when he's expressing himself. But the rest of the time, he's a shy introvert.
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists like that, and I'm assuming you do as well. Right. Yes. Do you want to elaborate on that, Jaylo? Or do you want me to take the lead?
So, I'm not sure how I want to go, where I want to go with this, but I think it says a lot that the only place where some people feel comfortable in is whether they're on TV or whether they're on the radio, because
or stage,
right? They have this presence about them, and that's the only way that they can get their feelings out without feeling ridiculed.
Let me make it more personal than that.
Okay.
I first started performing poetry in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
I began writing a few years before then, but I became comfortable enough to go on stage in January of that year. And for many, many years, I think I was Happy Harry Hardon on stage, and I was Mark when I was off the stage, because I could do these incredible shows and then walk off stage having people think I was a complete extrovert, then being surprised when they would talk to me and I would be this total introvert.
But I think that's a misconception about introverts, though. Not every introvert is a shy person.
No, but I'm speaking in general terms. I'm speaking about myself as well.
Right.
And I'm saying I became a stronger person once I was able to merge Mark and Happy Harry. So the stage persona went down a little bit, became more centered, and the everyday version of myself became a little bit more outgoing.
Right.
But when you're first starting out in the artistic process, I think there's a huge duality between who you are when you're doing your art and how you behave when you're not performing. Mark represents that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So does Nora to some extent.
Yes.
She's failing math, but she also volunteers at the library.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So she is a good student, just not in one subject.
Yes.
She's probably a good kid, but when she is around Christian Slater or listening to his radio program, she can be a little bit more of a rebel.
She's a different person. Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. Totally agree.
What do you think about his parents?
Oh, I have a lot to think about his parents. I find it very interesting. It just seems like they're kind of in their own world, right? They're not paying attention as to who. Maybe they start starting to figure out towards the end of the movie who he is, but they're clueless as to what Mark is doing with all that equipment. They know that he goes downstairs, but they don't know why. Sometimes he may be down there, they may think that he's down there doing his homework or reading or whatever, being by himself. They think that, maybe he would be better off if he went out and joined a bunch of programs at school, but they don't realize that that's not the kind of person he is. And he feels more comfortable being on the airwaves than interacting with people because he's not comfortable and he's trying to find his own voice.
Okay, that's not the take I would have had of his parents exactly.
But I think that they're clueless.
Let me tell you my opinion of Mark's parents. And we get a little bit of a glimpse of this early on in the film. Mark wraps up his first radio show that we know of, goes upstairs, grabs a beer. You overhear his parents talking and his dad saying, something to the effect of, I used to be a hippie and now I'm working for the system.
That's right, yeah.
We also hear Mark at one point in the film say, everybody's a sellout. I'm a sellout. And my parents became sellouts when they decided to have me. My take is that they were outsiders. They were hippies. They questioned the system back in the 60s. They probably went to a good number of protests. But, life goes on. They have a kid. They love their child. They have a good education. They decide to join the system.
Actually, you're right. I do remember them talking about that. Yep.
Right. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So they join the system. So they represent what the system does to you. And it makes me wonder, they're never going to do a sequel to this movie because it's not popular enough. But
I don't think they should, honestly.
I'm up in the air about that. But if they did, would Mark be a sellout? Would he be like a famous radio host now, but who just does a standard show, and people listen to him based on his reputation and not what he's currently saying? And his kids would be the rebels.
Right.
So, they represent what the system does to you, and Mark represents the pushback of youth.
Interesting. So I didn't even think about that, but I just thought that, and I didn't even, I know that they talked about the system, but I didn't even think of it that way. So you You just enlightened me about that.
It's when they hear Mark on the radio, they know it's him.
They do. Well, eventually.
They do know it. No, they know it's him then.
Really?
But this is my theory.
Okay.
When they see Nora, they're thrilled that he has a girl. Like, think of it. Most parents, when it's like past 10 at night and there's this girl over at your house.
They wouldn't want that. Yeah.
And she's hiding from the parents. They're not going to be like, oh, go ahead, get her, buddy. They want to believe that it's not him. And they want their son to be kind of rebellious, too. His dad does what he can to push back against the system. When he finds out about the principal, he doesn't push it under the rug. He confronts it. They're good people who have been corrupted by the system. But they let Mark do the radio show and pretend that they don't know it's him.
Oh.
That's my theory.
Okay. And you might be right about that. I might be wrong about the other part. But, yeah, that is interesting.
So this movie works on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is open to interpretation. Yes.
Yes. If it was made today, he would be a podcast host, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Can you imagine the Happy Harry podcast?
That would be great. I mean, something tells me that his dad was probably Happy Henry Hard-On back in the early 60s.
Happy Henry?
Yeah. And his mom was probably Happy Hannah Hard-On. That's how they met.
Or Haley.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm so glad I got to show you this film. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Would you call it a classic?
Oh, I think so. I don't know that it would be so much up there with Gone with the Wind, and I haven't even seen it yet, but it's a good 90s classic, I think.
As far as teen films,
yeah,
it's in my top 3.
It's probably, yes, the top, one of the best teen films I've seen in a long time.
Yes.
Light.
Yes. The girl gives them plausible deniability. So they know they know something's up. They don't know what it is, but I think if I had to take a guess, they know it's Mark, but they're letting the girl be the excuse to why he's being so weird downstairs.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when they were asking questions, what were you doing? I was reading. No, really. What are you doing? You know. I think this is when, they start to kind of, starting to put the pieces together little by little.
Yes. And something tells me that they came from rich families, and obviously they rebelled and all that stuff. So I'm glad you liked it, babe.
Yeah.
30 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Came out August 22nd, 1990.
I'm surprised I didn't even hear about it because Christian Slater was really popular in the 90s. But I just never heard about this one.
It's hard to find this movie.
Wow. Yeah, I would imagine.
But it's a great one.
But you were able to get it.
I got it back in the early 2000s. 2008.
Yeah.
And I always kept my copy.
Very
for a day
good.
like last night.
Very good.
Yes. So moving on from that.
Yes.
I showed you another film.
Yeah, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. And I wasn't too sure what I was going to expect because I thought, oh, that sounds so depressing.
I've taken the lead on a lot of this, so do you want to give the description?
Okay, so the basic premise is this. There's a guy, his name is Greg. He's kind of a loner. He has a friend named Earl that he's known since he was a kid, and they make these awful movies together. And they're, he considers it work, I guess, or maybe not so much work, but he likes making these weird movies with Earl, and they pretty much, they're not good.
They're rip-offs of better movies.
They're rip-offs of better movies, and even the titles are bad. 2:48
p.m. Cowboy.
The Sock Work Orange, or whatever it is. Yeah. Dressed up socks. Yeah, it's pretty bad. They're pretty bad B movies. Well, in the midst of all that, his mom alerts Greg to Denise Kutcher's daughter Rachel and says, she was diagnosed with leukemia and I really want you to visit. And she is very much intent on making him go. She is like, you have to go. You are depriving a girl of having any kind of fun. You have to go, right? She's literally making him go, and she's
following him around the house.
Following around the house, and she's like, would you stop? Would you stop? And she's like, you have to go. And then she's making it known that it would disappoint her if he didn't do that. Meanwhile, he decides, okay, I'm gonna go see her for an hour and whatever, and then I'll just leave. He goes to the house and meets Denise Kutcher, who's played by, I believe it was Molly Shannon, and Molly Shannon's always played some weird characters, but I thought Denise Kutcher was kind of odd. Would you say so?
Yes.
She's very strange. She refers to him as a mouse, a little mouse. It's very odd. The weird thing is when she sees him, and she hugs him and says, "Oh, you're a good boy," and she starts kissing his cheeks, and I'm like, okay, that's weird.
I thought she started grabbing his cheeks.
No, she was kissing his cheeks.
Okay, gotcha.
She was grabbing his cheeks and she was giving him kisses.
Gotcha. Keep going.
Which is really weird. And so she goes, she alerts him to the upstairs where her room is, and he goes to see her, and he's already making these jokes and trying to make her laugh, and she's like, you know what, I'm okay. Rachel's like, I'm fine. You can go. I really don't need your help. It's okay. And he's like, you know what? All I have to say is that if it wasn't for my mom making me do this, I mean, she really would make my life a living nightmare because she really wanted me to do this, and I really didn't want to do this, but I just want to see how you're doing. Make the most of it or whatever it is. And I think you should continue on. Please.
Okay. Back at school, Greg is a somewhat popular kid. He's liked by everybody. He doesn't really belong to a clique, but people kind of enjoy him and think that he's a witty person and that type of thing.
Right.
He gets along with his history teacher pretty well. Him and Earl kind of hang out with him during lunch.
Yep.
And he still keeps making his movies and visiting Rachel, having a good time doing that type of thing. Mm-hmm. One day, Rachel decides to visit school. This is maybe 3 months into her treatment.
Yep.
She invites Greg to sit down with her and her female companions during lunch.
And one of them happens to be Madison, I think.
Who is a girl that Greg is super attracted to.
Yep.
A joke that Rachel and Greg have is that Greg is sexually turned on by pillows. And Madison has a pillow in her lap that she got from home ec class. And she says, oh, we're supposed to pretend this is a baby. And Greg says something like, oh, don't sit too close to me. I might get cum all over it.
Yeah, and then Rachel's like, that is really gross.
Right. This other kid, Mayhew?
Scott Mayhew.
Who it took years for Greg to earn his trust.
Yep.
Walks into the cafeteria.
And he makes fun of him.
Yes, and everybody says that was loud enough for him to hear. That comes up later.
Yeah.
Okay. Greg eventually takes Earl to see Rachel. Mm-hmm. They go out for ice cream, and Rachel's like, well, it's so weird. He refers to you as his coworker.
What is that supposed to mean? He's just like, oh, he just calls people his coworkers if he doesn't want to call them his friends.
Right.
It's kind of a setup for another scene.
He doesn't have a good role model.
He doesn't have a good role model, yeah.
Because his dad just stays at home and talks to their cat.
Yeah.
And Earl also explains about the movies because Rachel doesn't know about them. Mm-hmm. So Greg gives her a copy of one of them. She likes it, and she starts watching their films. Mm-hmm. You know, having a good time. Meanwhile, back at the school, mm-hmm. Greg's history teacher is eating pho one day and tells Earl and Greg that they should try some.
And by the way, I don't like pho. It's a Vietnamese soup for anyone who hasn't had it.
I like it with the K on the end. But anyways.
Bad joke.
Okay, Jay, calm down.
What?
They eat the pho. Babes, I'm trying to... Afterwards, they get some cookies from this guy named Ill Phil, who is not the best rapper in the world.
Oh, he's terrible.
Greg knows him.
He's terrible.
These cookies are laced with marijuana.
And they don't realize it. They think it's in the pho.
Yes. They're talking about this on the bus. Scott Mayhew hears about it, goes to the teacher. Next day in... Actually, that happened right before the ice cream thing.
It did. I think we're kind of backtracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should explain that and then go on to the rest of the movie.
Explain what?
The ill Phil thing.
Okay. Yeah. No, but I mean, they got high before the ice cream thing.
They did, and they didn't realize it until
Right. Okay,
yeah.
So next day they're in class, teacher confronts them about it, and Greg says, well, we only ate pho and those cookies we got from Ill Phil, and then they realize that Ill Phil gets kicked out of the school.
And Earl was like upset because she's like, why did you say that?
Right.
Yeah.
Eventually there's a fight between Greg and Ill Phil, and Earl jumps in. But babe, why don't you tell a little bit more about this movie?
Yeah, it was a funny scene with Ill Phil because weren't they like hanging on to each other and they weren't punching each other, and then Earl steps in and beats up Ill Phil, right?
Right.
Well, so fast forward, because I know there's a lot of things leading to this. Rachel stops treatment, and she pretty much has given up on her life, and she's like, I've pretty much am going to wait for myself to die. But I guess I should mention before that is that Madison, the very attractive girl that Greg's attracted to.
The one with the pillow.
Yeah, the one with the pillow. She suggests that she thinks that Rachel would like them to make her a movie especially for her. I forgot to mention that.
Earl and Greg.
So anyway, Rachel decides that she has given up on her life. She doesn't want to take any more treatment, and who would? It's terrible for your body, by the way. But she just pretty much given up on life, and Greg was basically saying, I want you to keep on going. I want you to keep on fighting. I wouldn't be a good friend if I told you to stop fighting. And she's basically saying, well, I think you're a terrible friend because you don't want me to do what I want to do. And so he storms off. Greg and Earl... This is before, I think Greg, this is before his whole academic thing is completely...
Greg is upset with Earl because Earl spilled the beans about the movie to Rachel.
Yep.
He goes over to his house.
Yep.
They get into a fight. But Earl easily wins.
But Earl made a really good point, is that, I am sick and tired of you treating like a burden. You are treating somebody like that who actually cares about you, and you're treating her like a burden. And he's like, nobody cares about you, Greg. Nobody cares about you. All you really care about is yourself. And they get into a fight, and they don't talk for a while. Would you continue on, please?
All right. Scott Mayhew and Ill Phil, that whole thing, kind of gets Greg hanging out with Earl again. Earl submits a video for the film that he gives to Greg's father. Greg watches it. I love this scene. Mm-hmm. And Earl basically says, most white ladies are just obsessed with themselves and they think that they're good people.
I mean, really, they are.
But you're actually a good person. You actually care about other people. I thought that was so truthful and awesome.
And he said that he felt blessed having known her.
Yes.
Having known her. And that she keeps on, that because he's taught her a lot. And I thought that was a great scene.
Because Greg hasn't been doing any real work during his school year, it looks like he's not going to be able to get into college.
Yep.
Earlier in the film, Rachel had talked to him about that and said, hey, you should really plan for your future, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But he kind of puts that to the side. He finds out that he's not getting into college, and he's upset. Mm-hmm. But he gets a date with Madison to the prom.
Yep, she just says, I really want to make it up to you. I know you've been having a horrible time, and I know I haven't been treating you right, and I want to invite you to the prom. And they go to the prom.
They don't go to the prom.
I thought they did.
No, he stands her up.
Really?
He goes to the hospital.
Oh, okay. You didn't explain that. I know he went to the hospital, but I thought that he was going to go to the hospital before going to the prom.
Yeah, he was, but he never makes it to the prom because of what happens at the hospital.
Oh, okay. Yes. Shall we?
Maybe you should way off the pocket. Okay. All right, stop it, babe. Stop it, you. He goes to the hospital, Jaylo.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides to show Rachel the film about her.
Yep.
That was made, and it's not that good. Let's be honest.
And it's not perfect, he said, but I want to show you what I.
It's so bad that she decides, rather than watch the ending, she's gonna go into a coma right now.
She stops. She starts having problems breathing.
And she dies 10 hours later.
Yeah.
Before she went to the hospital, she wrote a university a letter explaining, listen, my buddy Greg has really bad grades, but it's not what you think. The reason he's doing bad academically is because he spent the last year trying to make my life a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And he's too modest to tell you this, but please give him a chance to explain himself.
Right.
This whole movie has been Greg writing this admissions letter to that university.
And that was the end of the movie.
Yes.
Yes.
What were your thoughts?
It was very interesting. I didn't have a lot of expectations. I was just thinking that this movie was going to be really depressing because there's a dying girl in it who just happens to have cancer.
But it also has Earl.
And Earl. Earl is kind of like the side plot.
Right. Keep going.
We don't know much about Earl in the movie, per se.
In the book, it goes to his family life a little bit more, but keep going.
Yeah, and I wasn't too sure what to think about Earl, but when he made that speech to Greg, basically saying nobody cares about you. You're the only one who cares about you. And we actually do care about you. We actually want you to grow. Says a lot about Earl because he didn't come from a really good beginning, it sounds like.
No.
And, Greg has both parents. His dad's kind of weird, though.
Both of his parents are weird.
But they're loving parents, I think.
I don't know about his mom.
His mom's kind of odd.
She kind of seems like a see you next Tuesday to me, but keep going, baby.
Yeah, anyway. But I think it really says a lot about encouragement. Even though Rachel has pretty much given up on our life and she decides that, I'm going to die and this is how it's going to be, she wanted to make sure that Greg had a better start with his life, or a better beginning with the next chapter of his life, and didn't want him to pass up that opportunity, and was a good encourager, I think.
It also says something about being there for other people, not just to encourage them, but to just be there.
Yep. I honestly
Tell them how you feel.
And I also think it really makes you think about a person's will to live if they are sick like that. And speaking from personal experience, I didn't ever once give up on my own life. I just decided that I was going to fight as much as I could. And if I couldn't fight anymore, I couldn't fight anymore, but at least I put in a good fight.
I'm glad you made it, babe.
As am I.
Yeah.
As am I. Yeah. And I'm a better person for it.
Oh.
But it really makes you think about the will. A person who is sick with a possible terminal I can't talk.
Terminal illness.
Yes, a possible terminal illness. What, do they want to fight to live or do they want to die? And I wasn't going to give up. And I wish that Rachel would have kept on going.
I'm glad she didn't because it makes for a better movie. Because if it was your typical teenage film, she would have pulled through. And in fact, Greg makes references to this throughout the movie, saying, I know what you're saying, don't worry, she's not going to die.
She's not going to die.
Or he says stuff like, when they're watching 2:48 p.m. Cowboy. This would be the scene where we would, if this is a typical teenage film, this would be the scene where we kiss or she says something profound about her life.
And that's not what happened.
Yeah.
That we would fall in love, but that's not what happened.
Right.
But and then when she finally dies, he's like, I know I said that she wasn't gonna die, but she did, and I'm sorry.
Yes.
What did you think about that?
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see that in other teenage films, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I just thought it was, I thought it was interesting because I didn't know where it was going to go after he said, don't worry, she's not going to die. And then she does.
Yes.
And then he says, I know that I said she wasn't going to, but she did, and I'm sorry. I had to laugh at that.
Oh, good.
I had to laugh at it because I think it makes the reader or the listener want to know more about the story. And maybe it was a distraction, like, okay, I'm going to say this to keep you wanting more of the story, and then I'll tell you what really happened.
But it worked.
But it worked. It did. Yeah.
Very good, Babeless.
It was good. It wasn't as depressing as I thought it was.
No, there were some very funny scenes in the movie.
There was very funny scenes, yes.
I like at the end of it, after she's died, he gets this note from Rachel saying, I want to leave you some of my pillows so you can show them some love, but not in the sick, perverted way you're thinking.
Because that's disgusting. I want you to have my pillows and so that they can have a good home and they will be loved, but not the way that you're thinking. Because that's disgusting. I thought that was great. That was a continuing joke. So you don't see, and I think I should note that you don't ever see Madison again after the prom thing.
No.
You don't.
Presumably, though, if she finds out what happens because she was friends with Rachel, she's not going to be that upset with Greg. Greg could probably finagle another date out of her.
I thought that the scene with the cab driver was really funny, or the limo driver.
Was that Hannibal Buress? Because it sounded like him.
I have no idea who that is.
He's a stand-up comedian. He's famous. Good people will like this, but you might. He made a joke about Phil Cosby in Philadelphia that kind of reignited the whole controversy over Mr. Cosby and women.
Oh, I don't remember him. I just thought it was so funny when he was talking to him and like something, and he's talking about what the street he wants to go, and he's like, huh? Do you love her? Huh?
He also, he's a good comedian, but
it's really funny.
It's a good movie.
That scene was hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you would recommend this?
I would.
My track record is maintained.
I'll just say this: it's not a movie that you would want to break out the popcorn.
Right.
But it really does make you think about the will of a sick person, encouragement, and growing. And keep on keeping on, and really learning how to improve yourself every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am so glad that I've gotten to show you a lot of cool films.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that you've responded well to them.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to show you some films tonight.
The Notebook.
Yes.
And 50 First Dates.
And they're both romantic movies. The Notebook is a little bit more serious, but and don't worry, nobody dies in any of the movies. I just wanted to let you know that.
That's what Greg said.
No, it's true. Nobody dies in the movies.
Okay.
But The Notebook makes you think also, and 50 First Dates also kind of makes you think too, even though you're also laughing. But, nice. Rachel McAdams in The Notebook is very good in it. I can't remember who plays the guy, but it's a very good movie. Very touching. But enough of that.
Yes.
We'll have to talk about that tomorrow.
That's all right, Babels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great movies. We made some really yummy grilled cheese sandwiches.
They're good.
They were very good. It was different because we were cooking them on my stove.
I have a Foreman grill at my place, so I can do the lazy man's one, where I just assemble them, put them on, and I don't have to worry about flipping them. But this time that was not the case.
What I should have done is I should have given you the spatula instead of the tongs, even though the tongs could work for different things like meats and...
Yeah, I honestly prefer just using the grill to cook them.
Yeah.
But we put on them sour cream.
We did cream cheese, mozzarella and cheddar.
Yep.
And some pickles and some hummus.
Okay, but the way we assembled them is cream cheese on the bottom, hummus on the cream cheese, the 2 cheeses, and then the pickles.
May I make a suggestion?
No.
If you're gonna, please.
But go ahead.
So I just realized something because when I was learning how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, it's been a long time since I've done it.
Yeah.
So you put the butter on the sides of the bread while you're cooking it, but you put them on one piece of bread, and you cook the 2 pieces of bread, but you don't put anything on it when they're
really?
on the stove.
But then how is the cheese going to melt, though?
Well, because the bread is going to be hot when you take it off of the stove.
But it's not going to be hot enough to melt the cheese, though.
I think it will. Or maybe you might have to put it for like a few seconds in the microwave and melt it.
No, you don't want to do that because that'll make it too liquidy. I'll tell you what. Why don't you, because you still have bread and the fixins. This week, why don't you try making a grilled cheese sandwich that way? I'm telling you it won't work.
I don't know. I might try that.
I don't think that the bread is going to be hot enough to melt the cheese.
Because I've made them before, but what I did...
With that method?
Or what you could do, and maybe I need to look this up again because I have not made a sandwich on the stove for a long time. But I think what happens is you put the butter on the one piece of bread, and then you put the cheese on the other piece of the bread. And then I had to look it up, sorry.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it. Both methods sound very shoddy. And it sounds like the people who taught you how to make grilled cheese sandwiches are questionable at best.
No, that was my home ec teacher from Mississippi, and she was a very, very good teacher. And it did work when I did it.
Try it this week. And
I'm going to look up some recipes and see if I can, and I will put the hummus and the other stuff on it. But
okay, I would, if you think it's going to work, I would try it this week and then report back to me. Because it doesn't sound like it's a good solution.
Yeah, but just because it isn't the way that you do it.
Yes, that's why I'm telling you, babe, to try it this week. And I'm not just dismissing out in general. I'm telling you I don't think it'll work, but that shouldn't prevent you from giving it a shot.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I know nobody puts Jaylo in a corner, so I love you, babes.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. It's a Dirty Dancing reference. Yes. By the way, if anyone has not seen Dirty Dancing, you should go see it.
We watched it over the phone.
Yeah, that was weird. I would have loved to have watched at your place instead of over the phone. But
this was like in April when the pandemic was at its height.
This was around that time. Yep.
And Jamie Lee Curtis was doing this fundraiser in participation with Lionsgate. So you could go to their YouTube channel on Friday nights and watch a live stream that she hosted. And she presented different films. I believe some of them were like the first Hunger Games movie, John Wick, and Dirty Dancing, and then La La Land. And you and me watched La La Land together.
It was a good movie.
They gave out a number in the middle of the movie that you could text, I believe, to donate money to the theater chains.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was either that or you went through a link, but I donated $20.
I can't remember, but I thought it was really cool what Lionsgate did on YouTube. Yeah. It was kind of hard because my computer was kind of buffering, but...
Yeah, you were always like, what's going on now?
I wasn't like that.
Okay, sorry.
You were the one that was telling me stuff.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes.
I could have just told you to shut up, but I didn't.
Okay.
No, I appreciate your descriptions.
Thank you.
I will say that you are a very good describer.
Oh, thanks, babes.
I'm glad that you don't describe everything because that would really, really annoy me.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you're describing like the important parts.
Sometimes when I recap movies, I'm either afraid that I don't give out enough, or I give out too much, or that sometimes I'll miss a scene and have to go back and say, oh, this actually happened before that.
That's okay. I honestly don't mind that you know, because even if you forgot, you could just, you would pause it and say, okay, I should tell you this because I forgot this part, you know.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it.
Thank you, babes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I will try it. I'm going to look it up because I remember that I cooked them a different way on the stove.
Okay.
Yes.
Your method sounds sketchy, but you're going to try it this week.
I will.
And we'll see who is correct.
And if I don't try it this week, I'll do it next week.
Right. I think you should do it this week. But that's just me, Jaylo. How you feeling, Jays?
Good.
I think we need a kiss because you're a little bit upset.
About what?
About the, my take on the grilled cheese sandwiches. Okay?
Well, no, then you kind of interrupted me in the middle of the podcast.
When did I interrupt
When
you?
I was describing stuff, and you're like, oh, no, you forgot it.
Well, you did, babes.
But
I think I need a kiss. You need a kiss.
Do I?
Yeah, we both need to start the healing. Begins now.
Healing begins now. Okay.
All right, Jaylo.
Enough of that. Save it for later.
Jeez, yes. Yes, babes.
Yes.
So much, babes. We've covered a lot today, babes.
We did cover a lot.
Yeah.
How long has it been?
Like an hour and a half, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. You know what? Despite this time where almost everybody is at home, I think our podcasts have become a lot better and longer.
They have.
Would you say?
Our first one was like 22 minutes.
Wow.
But you know what I've heard is suffering, babe? People aren't donating to NPR as much anymore during the pandemic.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are out of a job, unfortunately.
Right, but it sucks that NPR is facing the brunt about that.
Oh.
Even though they can be a little bit too, like, I don't know, snobby and establishment.
I would agree with you on that, and that's why I don't listen to them. But I will say this: I do like their music selections. I like their what is it? All music considered.
All songs considered.
I also like is KMHD an affiliate with NPR?
I believe so.
Their jazz is so good, and I like that there's so much music. There's no commercials on KMHD stuff, and I love their music. I think their jazz is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with NPR. They're a little bit too elitist for me, but they do some good stories.
I would actually concur with you on that.
Yes.
But KMHD, do you ever listen to that jazz station? It's really good.
I never listened to it back in the day.
It's good.
But since we've started dating, I do throw it on occasionally.
No, KMHD is awesome. None of that cool jazz stuff smooth jazz stuff that I don't like.
You know what I wish they had, babe?
Like
an FM station that just played acid jazz.
Is that kind of like fusion jazz?
It's kind of like who's a good like the brand new heavies. I think would be considered acid jazz.
Oh wow, yeah, the brand new heavies is great.
They are.
I remember when I first heard them in the '90s, and I'm like, what group is this? This is great.
Dream on, dream on.
Yeah.
I think you might even call Incognito. I don't know if you'd call Incognito acid jazz or not.
No, I think they're kind of like a mix of stuff like jazz, pop, and techno. No, I'm sorry, no.
Fine.
Jazz, pop, and dance.
Yeah, but I wish that they had more categories like that on the FM dial. I think that's one of the things that's killing radio, is they're too caught into these little formats that people are growing out of.
And there's a radio station I'm trying to find, and I believe it's an AM station. It sounded like their call letters were KISN, but I don't know. If I ever run into that person that plays that station, I'm going to ask them what it is, because I've been trying to find it.
Are you talking about that oldie station?
Yes.
I don't get why you would listen to that.
Because the music is good.
But you can find that type of music anywhere, though.
I understand, but it was a good station.
Okay. Okay, Jaylo. The Jaylo is very reactive today. She took us for no reason.
I gotta keep you on your toes, Bubs.
Okay. Stop. Jaylo.
Yes.
Did you have any dreams last night?
I did not, but I slept so good. I was so tired. I would, and also because I woke up really early yesterday, and anticipating your arrival over here, and I woke up early yesterday, had a snack, read a little bit, listened to some stuff on the music, and I think I woke up like between 3 and 4.
Yes.
And by the time it was after 10, close to 10:30, I was so tired. I was out.
I didn't fall asleep until 1, but I slept very good too. And then this morning, we discovered something. I was playing with your feet, and I put them on my shoulders. You put a little bit of pressure. I think you broke up something.
Yeah, and you know what? When I was little, and I mentioned this to you earlier, when my sisters and I were little and my uncle was still alive, we used to walk on his back because our feet were still small yet. And he said that it felt really good. And I thought, you know what? I should try that because I've been using my hands a lot with putting pressure on your shoulders. And I thought, okay, I'll try that. I tried with you turning over, but it didn't work out. So
No. But we need to do more of that shoulder stuff in the future.
I think I might do that afterwards.
Oh, yeah. So, babe, is there anything else you want to say?
No, there is not. I thought we did a really, really good episode today, and we covered a lot of ground, and there was really no infighting. I may have tickled a few times, but
do we want to get into maybe a 20-minute political debate right now, or no?
No.
Okay.
I'm perfectly happy not talking about it right now. Okay. You don't want to get me worked up.
No.
I don't get it.
All right.
But anyway.
Let's kiss.
That is all for now.
Make out. Watch some Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And all that good stuff.
Get ready to make the pizza.
Yes.
That we're going to make.
The focaccia.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
Oh, yes. All right, until next time.
Until next time, happy Saturday.
Episode 65, Pump Up the Jaylo.
No.